Hey guys, welcome to the fourth part of what is a digital business model. And today we're going to continue. Last time we learned about the linear and the platform business model. If you haven't checked that one out, please do. You can also do that afterwards, that's fine. Today we're just going to return to the asset and service sharing vertical, which is one of 11 digital technology verticals. And we have explained why we're doing that this way. So today we'll be looking at four fascinating companies, or more really three: Getaround, car sharing; Zipcar, car sharing, but a linear business model; Lime, bike sharing; and Uber as a ride-hailing company. And we're going to look at why they had so different fates. So Getaround, Turo, and a number of other companies, quite a few, tried the car sharing approach. And by and large, and literally every single one of them had a somewhat similar fate as this one you see here. If they ever managed to have an IPO, it just collapsed. So Getaround came online via a SPAC, special acquisition company, and that is backed by very professional people who want to bring a company online to an IPO. And it was valued at over $1 billion at the time. And the moment they had the IPO, it just all went down. And if you look at Lime Bikes or all sorts of other bike sharing businesses, you will literally see the same thing. If they ever made it to an IPO, that's what happened. Look at Uber. Well, you will see they are sitting at $180 billion valuation as we speak. And Getaround currently sits at $6 million. That is a 30,000x difference, or 3 million %. Well, how did that happen? I think if we look at the key decisions that they made along the way, we will be able to understand it. So when you start out as a business, as a vehicle sharing company in this case, you have to make a number of very early decisions to even get to a minimal viable product. One of the first ones is who's going to own the vehicle. So in the case of Lime or Bird Bikes and Zipcar, it was the company that owned the vehicle. Zipcar, so that makes them a linear business model. And Zipcar has cars sitting, for example, at universities where they know there's demand, there's students there, they have a driver's license, but they don't have often sufficient income or assets to buy a car. So they got good coverage around those high demand areas. And then there is the platform business models. They decided that they will leverage the cars off the so-called supply side, which are car owners. And in that case, Getaround and Uber literally use the same approach at this point in time. So, and many thought that this capital saving that these companies have is the main driver of their success. But the different outcome that we've seen between Getaround and Uber, remember Getaround collapsed and Uber is flourishing, that just shows that the CapEx consideration was never the real driver. It is one, but it's not the decisive one, and it's not the only one. And yeah, I guess if you look at my coverage, I've said that for more than 5 years. In any case, so let's see what Uber and Getaround do. Uber and Getaround are platform business models. And they connect what we call the supply side. In the case of car sharing, that's the car owners, with the car renters, the guys who rent cars. And there's all sorts of different network effects. But in this case, it is cross-site or indirect network effects, because these are network effects between two different types of participants of the platform. So, and the primitive thinking is the more people rent cars, the more car owners will be there, because they will make more income, and the more cars there are, the shorter the pickup time, and the fees should go down, etc. So it should be a positive loop. Well, in the case of Uber, that's exactly what happened. In the case of Getaround, well, not so much, but now in theory that should have happened and everyone expected it to happen. So why did it not happen? Here's what else is in play. And this concept of search transaction, post-transaction costs, very few people know. And that's really sad, to be honest, that this is such an important concept. These are costs that occur for the demand or supply side that happen before the transaction starts, during the transaction, and even after the transaction. So it can be all sorts of things: awareness, it can be time savings, it can be actual financial costs, it can be risk aversion, and so on. So if people have to find and locate the car, in the case of Getaround, that adds time. So you want to use a car, well, you need to locate it, you need to book it ahead of time, you need to go there, then you need to find the car, actually, you need to find the street and the car and everything, and you need to pick it up. There's quite a bit of search and transaction cost involved. So we'll see in a moment why that is plays a role. By the way, if you're liking this video, please hit the like button, subscribe. We will continue this series and all sorts of new ones. So let's take a look. These are key decisions along the way that the companies need to make, and they can allocate them to the demand or the supply side. If you have a linear business model, you can only allocate them between the tech company and the demand side. So this is what bike sharing companies, literally all bike sharing companies work this way. This is where Uber and Getaround are different. So asset operation, the car is operated by the demand side, so by the guy who picks up, who rents the car, and the pickup and drop off also. Never mind the fact that the car can be placed at a desired point, but that costs additional money. In Uber, this is different, and that makes a whole lot of difference. These are search transaction costs, decisions, business model decisions that drive search transaction and post-transaction costs. But not only that, these ones, they also affect network effects. So if you have the car moving around, that the same amount of cars in the same area can create a lot higher network effects because they are mobile. If you assume that the drivers are willing to drive 3 minutes to make an income, to pick up someone, then that is much higher network effects because it's literally like two boxers fighting with Getaround. They have to stay on one spot and Uber can move around. And that's not a very fair boxing match. They just have a lot higher network effects because these cars are static. The pickup duration for the demand side will always be higher than for the supply side. And the other thing is when they pick it up, they make money and these guys get the benefits. So they're willing to pay a little bit of money for that convenience. This in return can affect the addressable markets. And let's look at that. So we have already seen the different outcomes, but let's see what this is a statement after 10 years. So let me just say, Uber and Getaround started at the same time in between 2009 and 2010. Getaround was much hailed. They won the TechCrunch Discover Prize and so on. They were lauded by many of the sharing economy proponents, and Uber, as you know, was not so much lauded. They were just, they were the bad guys. What happened? This is a statement from 2024, 13 years later. They have pivoted. This is from Turo, same type of company as Getaround, Turo Australia General Manager. We changed our minimum trip length to 1 day and shifted our focus to travel, road trips, longer term vehicle replacement. That's a very different market than what we're talking about. You know, the short rides that we have to do errands or whatever, they have a much higher frequency of occurrence. When was the last time that you needed a replacement car for a day on a travel road trip or a vehicle replacement? That's a much, much, much smaller addressable market than what Uber can address. And this is all driven by these decisions that affect the search and transaction costs. And that is why there is such a huge difference in the outcome. So what happened really? These companies had to make early decisions. They had to make these before they have a minimal viable product. So let's put aside this whole, we can just get started, and we'll just experiment our way to success. Well, once you've made these decisions, you make these decisions within the first few days, literally. Then you can experiment within these decisions. But you can get the best out that you can get out. But what is behind that? The addressable markets are possibly tiny compared to what is here. So if you know these concepts that are so little known, you can make much better decisions. And that's what we've been really saying in our premium and free material on digitalbusinessmodels.com for years. For almost 10 years, we've been uncovering these things. Even in our premium resource on Uber, we have written that in 2019. Well before what happened to Getaround. At that time, people thought these are going to be competitors to Uber. Well, that was never going to happen. Check out our free products, free articles, and premium articles where you can find more. And like and subscribe. You'll get a lot more insights for free. Thanks, guys.